Yo, what's good? It's your boy No Name. How y'all doing? Let's cover the Guardian now as well. Talk about both of the change tendencies. This rework had me puzzled, perplexed, befuddled. A multitude of other words that I won't get into right now. I just know that I have a lot of words for the words confused. And it's mostly just because I'm not really sure what to think of it yet with our incomplete information. I will probably revisit this when patch notes come out next week. So let's start with the stuff that I think is really easy to talk about. Radiant Faith and Unwavering Faith. I'm gonna pop those up so you guys can see what they used to be. There's some major differences between these nodes and their original version. Start with Radiant Faith. The energy shield line is the exact same. It's the armor line that got a change that is noteworthy. Instead of granting armor equal to 160% of your reserved life to you and your allies, it is now 20% of your reserved mana, which in the terms of an Aurabot, I've been told, and I've kind of seen, but I've been told mostly by people who have better Aurabot POBs on hand than I do, that this is a slight nerf to the amount of flat armor given by a full-on Aurabot. However, the solace in this change is that Mana Guardians just got a massive buff. Like, we're talking about Mana Guardians, right? Mana Guardians historically have 10, 15, 20k mana. So now having the armor you give scale off of your mana instead of your life, massive, massive. I like Mana Guardians are having the time of their lives because now I feel like Mana Guardian is going to get really close to filling that role of the defense bot or like the disc bot that was played a couple leagues, like maybe like a year or so ago, where so in that build they were just stacking Stalwart Commander to stack Discipline Effect, but the general idea was just that you would stack up so much flat for a defensive stat, and now as a Mana Guard, and that overrode Mana Guardians at the time because you could get more energy shield that way than stacking through mana. That build got annihilated with the changes to Cluster Jewels, and now with Armor and ES both scaling off of your reserve Mana Guardians are now really just truly large defensive bots. That is awesome. Huge fan of this. Unwavering Faith, on the other hand, is an interesting node because on one hand, increased recovery rate is a ridiculous stat for recovery. Like the amount of recovery that your character is going to have while supported by so Aura bots have say 10, anywhere between 10 and 15 auras, like depending on investment level, right? At 15 auras with 100% effect, that's a low number, but let's just all 100%. That's 150% increased recovery rate of life in Mana and ES. That's turning Vitality into like 600 a second. Or like Current Ground, that's 15% per second, right? Like it is a ridiculous effect. However, it replaces the old Unwavering Faith, right? And the real reason that Guardian was so good as a support is because of the PDR it gave. The recovery is nice, but it's the PDR that really like set it apart from your other options. Because that's just 30 PDR that a lot of Aurabots are going to be, that Guardian Aurabots are no longer providing. And for that reason, people are suggesting that like even if everything else turns out incredible, there's a good chance you just end up going over to Ascendant instead, because Ascendant currently, as we know, still has that PDR. All right, let's look at some of the other nodes real quick. Time of Need and Bastion of Hope. These are two nodes that are relatively straightforward, easy to understand. Bastion of Hope, huge fan of this change. I don't know if you remember the old Bastion of Hope. Bastion of Hope was 10% of each of those instead of 25, but then you had a weird rotating buff that gave you 50% block attack chance. And then the line that is missing that I am a little sad over personally is the stun immunity if you've blocked recently, or blocked within 10 seconds, I think it is. Stun immunity for you and nearby allies. So we sacrificed, we gained consistency on our attack and especially our spell block in exchange for losing the highs of our attack block, basically never needing to be invested in, as well as the stun immunity. And I think that's a fair trade-off. Personally, I'm a big fan of this change because I think spell block is a little bit of a pain to get invested in. And so I'm totally fine with, like, I value 15 spell block pretty highly. And to be honest, for the most part, you don't actually need stun immunity. It's just one of those things that tends to feel really nice when you do have it. Time of Need, on the other hand, is a nerf. It looks pretty because the life number increased. This is a nerf, and it's because even though they added elemental elements to it, they changed the curse one from reduce effect of curses to remove curses, which means that you will not be able to immune map mod curses anymore, or at least it no longer provides that 80% reduction of curse effect that it used to apply, which made it really easy by picking up like Asylum or Sanctum of Thought in order to completely immune yourself out of curses on maps. Removing elemental elements is cute, I guess, but I would have also just preferred this to be elemental element avoidance, or honestly, I feel like this would have been a great opportunity to utilize reduced elemental element duration finally on an ascendancy. That is a stat that they like have pushed at various times. If you look at Anointed Flesh, that wheel is element duration. When they introduced new keystones to the passive tree, I think I think it was at Scourge when they introduced this. Solipsism. That's a name you probably haven't heard a little bit. Solipsism is int stacking for reduced element effect duration. Like we have a lot of effects kind of surrounding it, and I think this would have been a really cool opportunity to double into that on an ascendancy finally. But you know, c'est la vie. What can you do? All right, these next three nodes, all the remaining three nodes are really difficult to talk about. So we'll start with the Radiant and Wyvern Crusades because I think these are the two nodes that are going to be the most controversially changed. Honestly, like okay, so Unwavering Faith got like a pretty big nerf, right? Or in some eyes, and a buff in some other eyes, right? Yeah. But the Crusade nodes are what made Guardian so popular previously in other aspects, right? So support Guardians took the Crusade notes because it gave your party speed and you liked that anyways. But standalone Guardians, or not like self-characters, Guardians, were using these notes because the previous versions of Radiant Crusade and Wyvern Crusade were damage notes. They were access to Onslaught and then a stat that's like Onslaught, but not actually Onslaught. Then you had Unnerve and Intimidate. You had damage. As long as you had enough nearby allies, which was achieved pretty easily through setups like Absolution or just running skitter bots or being a minion build, stuff like that, right? And this had seen, I would say, at the time of when this got to this nerf, right? We were just in a Templar leveling meta. I mean, not even just we're at in, right? We saw ExileCon, the race was done with Templars. And in regular racing, that is actually stepped up a step further by being done on Guardian because of the raw amount of speed that Guardian provides. The attack speed it provides, so very loosely, just makes leap slamming so efficient. Um, and so that was like a big thing for racing purposes, and then for personal play, it just felt really good. It was a large part of why Domblow never changed ascendancies. Just because you could put Domblow elsewhere, but the attack speed from from Guardian just felt so good as a Domblow character. So like, there's all sorts of things like that, right? So seeing Radiant Crusade and a Wyvern Crusade, now like all I can do is really speculate. Summon Sentinel of Radiance and 10% damage from the Sentinel of Radiance is taken, like it's taken from it before you. So I like the idea of being able to survive off of my minions. It gives me an idea, or it gives me a feeling akin to Jinx Juju. Great unique item for surviving off of your tankier specters. Now, here's my issue though. We don't know what a Sentinel Radiance does. I can't tell if this is a damage dealing minion or not. And the effect makes me think it's a tank minion. Which has me concerned because I don't know where in the world you're supposed to get damage from if that's not a damage minion, right? Because are we looking at an ascendancy with no damage? What's the deal? Then let's take it a step further. Unwavering Crusade was the one that gave like Onslaught Light or Onslaught like effect, and then Intimidate and Unnerve, right? But now it's a chance to trigger a relic, an elemental relic when you were nearby enemy kill something. Okay, two big things. One, what in the world is an elemental relic? Two, on kill. So is the node just useless in bossing? Is Sentinel of Radiance going to have a supplementary effect that helps trigger Unwavering Crusade? Like these are both very important questions that need to be answered, but we don't have answers yet. Um, Essentially just to think, what in the world is an elemental relic? Is it going to just do like a little Nova? So Holy Relic, the closest thing we have to this in the moment, it has like a little like Nova attack that also applies a healing buff. Are we gonna get like Elemental Relic that does a little Nova for damage, but also applies like a pen effect or something? Like this is a very important question that we need to know the answer to before we can really rate these properly. That's why I said this is pretty hard to talk about. Because we don't really know enough about either of these skills in question to be able to say if I think it's worth the ascendancy nodes or if I think you take your minion talents elsewhere. Harmony of Purpose, the big kahuna. Now, I'm not even gonna bother referencing the old Harmony of Purpose because that node sucked. The new Harmony of Purpose is weird because if you don't play supports, you might not know, or if you don't play with or play as supports, you might not know that link skills are incredibly strong as is. But they're really, really good already as is. Add a lot of damage, add a lot of defense, add a lot of block, less damage taken. It's good stuff. So Harmony of Purpose has the potential to be extremely broken, right? And it's all based on the use of this word between. If the word between is used in a definition of is used in the context of Harmony of Purpose to mean inclusive, meaning you and your linked target are counted in the between, this node is insane. If you and your linked target do not count as between, this node is terrible. Because look, if it counts you and your allies as like being between when you link to them, this is just lucky damage, which on certain carries is somewhere between 25 and 31% damage increase. This is now, allies between you and link targets have +5 max stress. That means you only need to investigate to 8 to 85. That's so much easier. And enemies between you and link targets. That part is a little difficult to make use of, so I'm not really going to count that as much. I think that was weird and jank as shit. But if we're talking about it, ascendancy node, that translates to somewhere about 30% damage for your carry, as well as +5 max rest for your party. This could be insane, but it really hinges on that definition, right? So, again, something I'm probably gonna just have to update later on when we get more details. At least 3 ascendancy nodes in this one that have to be updated later on when we get more information. Patch notes for next week. I'm excited. Get excited. Got a lot going on. It's been a while since we had a PoE league. I hate these 4-month leagues. We'll talk about that later. Anyways, that's my thought on Guardian. Overall, I would say potentially a net buff. Really depends on how I feel about Harmony of Purpose, but I wouldn't be surprised if Guardian falls out of favor, not necessarily out of its job, but out of favor with its job. And then as far as the minion side of Guardian goes, I don't know what to think yet. So we're just leaving it there. Overall, kind of an unimpressive rework, but is what it is. I guess everything can't just be Pathfinder. Anyways, thanks for listening. That's me out. Peace.